whenever the trauma response is associated with the word I rather than part of me, the response gets more intense and overwhelming. Whenever we validate the resistance, whenever we communicate acceptance of it by reframing it, for instance, as a resistant part, or we reframe stuckness as a way of staying safe, the stuck and resistant parts can relax. It's like we're saying, your resistance is understood, it's safe here, it's welcome as an honored visitor. And if there is this is what has always given me hope. If there's a resistant part or a part keeping things stuck, the reason the client is in my office is because there are also parts committed to recovery, committed to collaboration, committed to growing. Now, I can't say that because I've tried saying, well, the suicidal part is very, very loud right now. But the fact that you're here suggests there are also parts that are trying to live. Well, that usually creates huge resistance. The suicidal part fights that. So I don't say it, but I know it. I know that if if I welcome the resistant part or the stuck part or both, that gives more power to the parts that are trying to fight through the resistance. Now, parts have the ability to dominate through the phenomenon of blending. Blending is also, we could think of it as flooding, right? The client's body becomes flooded with the emotions or sensations or impulses of a part. We can call it passive influence, as it's called in hypnosis. It's a phenomenon that I think we probably all have experienced when we have a feeling and that feeling takes over everything. Um, and 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 we think that we are feeling our feelings when in fact we're feeling the feelings of a part. And if we're not aware, as clients frequently are not aware that they're blended and that the feelings are those of a part, clients either act on the feelings or they try to suppress them. Those are the most common things we do with feelings. And either of those results in the parts becoming more intense. Obviously, if the client tries to suppress the parts, that really forces them to become more intense. But when clients act on those impulses, the parts become more intense in that they're more motivated, right? We got to do it our way this time. Maybe we can get we can do it our way again. So, very, very important that I help clients notice that they're blended. Because if they don't know that they're blended, they're going to keep acting as the parts want them to act. So we have to have the courage. I realize TIST is very simple as a model, but it does require courage on the part of the therapist because we're making assertions about what the client feels or about what is going on in the client. And we don't always know that we're correct. My experience is that, if the client is in distress, they are blended. If the client is acting on their feelings in ways they don't want to, in ways that get them into more trouble, then I assume that they're blended. And and it's very, very important because they're blended with implicit trauma-related memories, feeling memories. And so if they blend, and I'll give you an example, and this is another example from Annie. she just said to me a week or so ago, she said, I have an incredibly beautiful yard, and I was sitting in it and feeling so appreciative, which is amazing because she has parts that are phobic of positive feelings. So to be able to sit and enjoy her yard was a sort of a new thing that she wasn't prevented from doing. And it was fascinating because it's the same yard. She's lived in that house for 40 years. It's the same yard, but for many, many years, blended with her parts, she would look at her house and yard and feel ashamed. The house she grew up in was dilapidated. It was obviously in need of repair. And 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 it was like a big sign that said, something is wrong with the family that lives in this house. Or the people who live in this house are very poor. And she would look at her house, lovingly maintained by she and her husband, and she would feel the part shame. They're feeling memory of shame over where they lived. And only when she was unblended, finally, she could look at her home and yard and say, wow, this is a really beautiful place to live. Very simple, not fancy. She and her husband don't have a lot of money, but they've painted every inch of their house, tended every inch of their yard, and they have made a beautiful place to live, which she never knew till she was unblended. So unblending is a two-step process. Step one is teaching the clients to notice they're blended, right? So I might say, notice the hopelessness. You are really, really blended with that part that's so hopeless. And the amazing thing, this is what I love about this word, which comes from Dick Schwartz and IFS, that clients recognize it. If I say, wow, you're really blended with that depressed part, most clients say, yeah, I am, aren't I? So I want to notice the blending, keep bringing it to the client's attention, but I want to notice the parts in some way, or talk about the parts in some way that helps to gradually generate some empathy for them. I might say, yes, the critical part is really, really active today. It must be worried about something. Can you separate from it just a little bit so you can be curious about it? And 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 again, maybe the hopeless part is just trying to help you avoid disappointment. When you blend with that part, you're agreeing that it's hopeless. How do you think that makes him feel? And that's a theme in helping clients to recognize blending. When they say, I am worthless, because a part thinks that it's worthless, um, that only confirms the part's worst fear. Now, sometimes clients will argue, it's very, I actually think it's funny. They will argue, I'm not adequate. I'm not normal. I'm not a grown up. And, and, and I say, which parts believe that you're not a grown up or you're not adequate or you're not competent? But it's not a fight I want to fight. Are you competent or are you not? So I say, well, you don't have to be competent. You just have to notice. You just have to use this part of the brain. And so the you of the client is defined as the observer, right? All I'm asking of the client is to notice the parts and notice when they're blended. And then I can ask clients to just separate from the part a little bit. I can say, what happens when you say that part is angry rather than I am angry? Or she is anxious. And when clients use the third person pronoun to describe the feeling, when they can say, she feels worthless rather than I feel worthless, most clients report a feeling of relief. And not a big, I'm totally relieved, but they feel just a little relief, which is a good advertisement to keep doing it. For some clients, I have helped them to develop unblending protocols because, especially with some stuck clients, or I wouldn't do this for resistant clients because they would resist it. And why give them something more to resist? But for stuck clients, it can be very helpful. So they get the idea of unblending, but they have trouble doing it. And so I say, all right, let's create some steps for getting there. So step one, assume that any distressing or uncomfortable feeling means that a part has been triggered and is talking to you. And then step two, put that part's feelings into words using she, he, or they. Speak for that part by naming the feelings as theirs. The next step is create a little more separation from the parts by sitting back, changing position, lengthening the spine. For this particular client, notice step 3 is almost always about creating a little more space. In this particular case, with a very stuck client, I used somatic ways of creating separation because she's a former child athlete. So the body is a very comfortable place for her. It might not work, it wouldn't work for everyone, but it worked for her.